A union dispute between a league's authority and a players' association is threatening to grind every bit of the 2023 season to a halt. This is a return of Better Call Ztank, and this is the case of the unsigned CBA between the National Rugby League and the Rugby League Players Association. So I have to admit, in terms of this situation, I wasn't really familiar with it. I mean, I heard about what was going on, but I wasn't really fully caught up in it and didn't really understand. I feel like most people are slowly starting to figure out what's properly going on with this whole dispute between the NRL and the RLPA. So the Rugby League Players Association is trying to write up a new collective bargaining agreement, and the ARL Commission, or CBA, to agree with the CBA. Pretty much you've been seeing all of these players posting this teal picture. I know a few ones, for example, I know Tedesco has posted one, Latrell Mitchell has posted one, Chad Townsend has posted one as well. So pretty much it's players are united, we will continue fighting for what is fair. So now what we're going into it is we're going to actually break down what they want, what the players want in this new bargaining agreement, and what's been sort of the talking point and what could happen potentially, whether or not the agreement actually does get done. So this is actually on the Sporting News website about what's going on. So just before Christmas, the NRL announced increased salary caps for the competitions, which saw the men's rise by around 25% and women's by 153%. The RLPA says the salary cap was determined without consultation and refused to acknowledge many issues that players wanted addressed. So pretty much this is what started everything, and now we get into pretty much the demands that the RLPA have collectively wanted. The first thing they want is a new medical support fund. And saying the quotes, in the current CBA, players only have 12 months to have any surgeries and rehabilitation paid for that will help fix the injuries they suffered during their careers. The players want the game's first medical support fund to ensure NRL and NRLW players, they can have these surgeries covered well into a retirement. So basically you do hear about cases of rugby league players that really didn't break into media after they retire, and they've got all these lingering problems that happen and they carry on into their post-playing careers, which is a very understandable approach. I mean, in a game which has pretty much probably just below the injury consistency level of the NFL, and the NFL has a lot more players, it's very important that stuff like this is introduced. And the secondly, which I feel is going to be the biggest thing that they want, is they want a NRLW CBA. A CBA for women would provide their contract security players' needs and the full terms and conditions that would help protect them and their families. Because I have heard a few things about how when the NRLW season isn't on, basically, or when it's agreed upon, if a woman's player trains and they get injured, they're not covered. So yeah, it's a bit of an irky situation. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of development now with the women's game, and they really do need a CBA, especially since they're now going to 10 teams this year from 6. So now we go to better terms for most vulnerable players. Players need better training wages, better minimum salaries, more contracts and contract certainty, match fees and transition benefits, all to support players, but specifically middle and lower income earners, basically raising the minimum wage, so to speak. So I think it's completely understandable. I mean, you don't exactly want to be on these sort of playing contracts, not earning enough, and then you get injured, and then and cut, and you're kind of, screwed in that case. Then they want a new past players program. Players' careers are getting shorter and the game is faster and harder. It can all be over at any moment, and you don't always get to choose when that moment is. We need to help NRL and NRLW players transition into life beyond the playing field. Like you said, shit can just happen just like that. I mean, you had as much as I don't want to bring them up, but it is a key important factor. What happened with Alex McKinnon back in 2014, and in an NFL example like Damar Hamlin that just only happened a couple of weeks ago. It's just you don't know when these players' careers are going to be over, and it's they really, luckily McKinnon had the support with the Knights and basically got into a role with them, which he still holds to this day. So there needs to be something more like this to help protect the players after they do retire. Now we go on to a fair agreement rights. So agreement rights include hours worked, number of matches played, wage structures, when players can secure a contract, pregnancy and parental policies, and fines, which are illegal in other workplaces. So, okay, there is another one. Improved Injury Hardship Fund. It needs to account for the additional eligible players, more than 250 across 10 women's teams and the Dolphins, coming into the CBA model. It needs to be extended to support all players who suffer serious injuries and can't secure a new contract until fully rehabilitated. So it's very much now, because they want this, is mostly like with the women, obviously, and now more players. So it's just, you gotta have them in support. And finally, a fair share of revenue. If players help the game generate more money than it expects, it should get their fair share. Their share isn't just going into salaries. Players want to fund new programs and benefits that will support current, future, and past players. So those are basically, I won't say demands, but basically what the Players Association wants to be done in this new CBA. I do remember, I think the last one was signed back in 2017, so obviously very much needs a new one. So there is very much a possibility the NRL can be on strike. Pretty much a bunch of clubs have had players just refuse to do media requirements for the clubs. I believe, I think the Sharks were one. I know the Knights were one, as was brought up. And when it comes to there being a potential striking to boycott games, it can very much get possible. So I remember Kurt Capel was interviewed and said, as a direct quote, "As players, we don't want to get into that. We love the game. We would never want to see it not on TV screens and let the fans down. What we want as a playing group is the NRL to come to the table and be ready to negotiate. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. As players, we are all united in this, taking a stand. I'm sure the NRL can finally come to the party and negotiate a fair CBA to make sure that this doesn't hinder this game." So that's pretty much what's currently going on. One thing I have noticed in this whole situation is the NRL are kind of in sort of damage control, because let's face it, they're not very popular at the moment, is basically for this pre-season challenge, which is weird. So it's now the pre-season's just competitive. So it's now a ladder system, and then they get points for if they get over certain try things or line breaks. It's and the winning club gets $100,000, or what's known in the professional sports industry, fuck all. It's just silly, and it's all it is. It's just really the NRL going into sort of damage control, making them talk about another point so they can distract from this whole CBA negotiations. So from the accounts on the whole situation, from in terms of people in the industry and stuff like that, pretty much all of them are very much in support. I do remember there was one person that I've seen actually is against this, and it's a former Manly player. I think it's Noel Cleal. He launched an attack on basically calling all the players greedy, and also told them to go to buggery. So he also goes in and says, "We have a duty to leave a legacy in the game, and greed shouldn't be a part of that legacy. If I was Peter V'landys, I'd be telling him to go to buggery. They can't keep going back to the well. We want more, more, more. Today, if another club comes along with a bigger offer, a player will break contract. They just say, I want out. It's all about greed. It's not about the game." And they're basically saying, because obviously he played in a different era, it's I came through when a handshake was your word, it was your honor. But also, for me, it just seems when it comes to Cleal in terms of that handshake thing, it's you also got to put into perspective, he played in Australia specifically, between 1980 and 1989. When pretty much everybody, you weren't earning a livable wage just off rugby league. Everybody still had second-hand jobs, and that was still the case pretty much until the Super League came in and started the war. So, I don't know, but what I will say in this whole thing, I'm not a person that goes into political allegories a lot, but even I know when a boot has just been licked. That's going to be the end of this video in terms of the situation. What are you guys seeing? Do you think the RLPA are completely justified in this? Do you think there's a little bit of a middle ground sort of thing? It's I don't know. Or are you on the side of Cleal and basically saying all these players are basically all greedy? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all later.